Hello and welcome back again. In this video, we're going to be looking at vocabulary having to do with the kitchen, the table, and hosting. These are words to use when company's coming. Ha triklinos is a dining room, and you can see the tri from tres, three, at the beginning of that, and klinos, having to do with lounging or leaning, because a dining room was a room built for 3 couches arranged in a U-shape, and ideally a meal would be shared by 9 people in a triklinos, 3 lounging across each of the 3 tables. Ta deipnon is dinner or supper, and this would be eaten in the triklinos, particularly for middle or upper class families. Ta symposion, on the other hand, is really a drinking party that would take place after the dinner. The focus was conversation and entertainments by musicians and dancers. Sometimes in the symposion we would have readings from authors like Cicero who have just finished new compositions and want to present them to their friends. Ta ariston is lunch, or a midday meal. And very often, even among the lower classes, ta ariston was a meal eaten out. There were very common snack bars that sold things like bread with a little bit of garum, fish sauce, or sold a little bit of soup. And often that would be the way people would eat their lunch, and often eat lunch standing or moving on the go. He trapeza, which stands in the middle of the couches in the triklinos, is a table. And notice the English word trapezoid comes from this term trapeza. Heklesis means calling or summons or invitation, and this is derived from kaleo, I call. Xenos, xene, xenon, is an adjective meaning foreign or unfamiliar, and so it can mean a stranger. But hoxenos can also mean a guest or a host, as well as a foreigner. Heithura is the door, and doors figure prominently often in Greco-Roman wall art and murals and things. They were significant as the entrance to someone's home. If we're preparing the food, we'll go into ta optanion. This is the kitchen. And kitchens were often very small and cramped, not really well equipped to prepare large meals, even in large wealthy houses. If someone was going to hold a large banquet, often those would be catered from cooks off-site. But as you can see in the photograph at right here, there would usually be a wood-fired stove with a grill of some kind, as well as some kind of smaller grill, and in some cases a bread oven. Hetoimadzo means I prepare. And the first aorist here is going to be hetoimasa, because we need to remember that the zeta, when it combines with the sigma tense marker, will just become a sigma. And so instead of hetoimadsa, we have hetoimasa. Kopto means I cut, or I cut off. And the first aorist here is ekopsa. The p-tau combination, when it runs up against the sigma tense marker, just becomes a psi. Really the tau disappears and the p and the sigma combine to make psi. So ekopsa. Plerao means I fill up, or I fulfill. This is an omicron contract verb, and so that omicron will usually lengthen ahead of the sigma tense marker. The first aorist then is eplerosa. Baptizo may not be a word we expect to see in this connection because we think of this as a ritual term for baptizing. But baptizo was actually a very common word to dip something or submerge something. And so when John the Baptist comes, he's actually coming dipping people into the Jordan River. That means it's a term that's also used in kitchen contexts, when you dip a cup into a vat of wine, for example. The first aorist here again is ebaptisa, the zeta and the sigma combining just to result in a sigma alone. The main word for eating is estheo, and outside the present stem we get the stem phag, phi alpha gamma. So the future is phagomai, and notice that it becomes deponent, and the second aorist form is ephagon. Pino means I drink, and the final nu in the stem disappears in most forms outside the present. So the second aorist form is not epinon, but epion. And the future is not pinomai, but piomai. And the second person singular, similarly, is pietai. The present infinitive even is piein. And so it looks like the nu really was added to the end of the stem of pino just because it makes it a little bit easier to pronounce in some of the present forms. But even in the present infinitive, where it's easily pronounceable, we have just piein.
Why might I decide to eat something? Because I'm hungry. And the verb penao means I am hungry or I hunger. This is a fairly standard contract verb, and it takes first aorist forms. Notice, though, that unlike some contract verbs, the alpha contract vowel doesn't lengthen when you add the sigma tense marker. So the first aorist is epenasa, I was hungry. Hunger, of course, was something that most people experienced a lot in antiquity. Slaves may or may not have been served enough food, but many free people also survived just at a subsistence level, and it was a question for many of them whether they'd have enough food to fill their stomachs this week or next week. In the city of Rome, the Senate had to distribute a free daily allotment of bread just to ensure that a whole lot of its citizens didn't begin to starve. So this is a verb that would have a very visceral, gut-level force for a lot of people in the first century.
Topoton is a drink or beverage. Fruit juices were all but unknown, and milk wasn't drunk as a beverage, so the primary beverage was wine, sometimes cut half and half with water, because people didn't want to be intoxicated at every meal. And water itself was very rarely drunk because of common pollution in the water sources and wells near large cities. Topoterion is the word for cup, and you can see there the relationship to poton. You have poton, which is the drink, and poterion, which is the cup. At right, you can see an example of some of the exquisite glassware cups that the Romans used, at least those who could afford them. Diakoneo means I serve. And although we recognize here the Christian word deacon, this is really a general word for service or help. It's a contract verb, an epsilon contract verb, and so the first aorist will be ediakonesa, the epsilon contract vowel lengthening in front of the sigma. The related noun is heidiakonia, service, and the person who carries out this service is hodiakonos, a servant or deacon. Perisuo means I am abundant, I am rich, I overflow. And as we see in the illustration from a mosaic, Roman mosaic at right, often the servants were in the business of filling up the water containers for washing and the wine beakers almost to overflowing as a sign of hospitality and wealth.